Hello friends, welcome to the Movieology channel. The second episode introduced Sun-hai, a scriptwriter looking for a peaceful place to live. She wanted a quiet, independent house, far from noisy neighborhoods and apartment complexes. A real estate agent showed her a remote house with no neighbors around. The house had a locked room, and the landlord refused to open it, saying construction work wasn't finished there. Once settled, Sun-hai began arranging her belongings and cleaning up. While setting up a mirror, she accidentally cut her finger. Something strange caught her eye as she looked in the mirror, a reflection that didn't seem quite right. The landlord had strictly instructed Sun-hai not to open a specific door in the house, which is why this episode is fittingly titled, The Door. Sun-hai decided to cover the door with a curtain to avoid focusing on it, though the mystery of the locked room still lingered in her mind. Later, we see Ji-woong, a student, nervously walking past the dark alley. His fear of the eerie path grows so intense that he begins singing loudly to distract himself. As he continues, he feels an unsettling presence behind him. His route takes him past Sun-hai's house, where she's absorbed in her script writing. However, Ji-woong's loud singing disrupts her focus, leaving her frustrated and upset. Ji-woong eventually arrives near the light shop, but doesn't go in. Instead, he rushes past it. Meanwhile, Sun-hai, working late into the night, dozes off at her desk. She's abruptly woken when the power in her house goes out. Though seemingly a minor inconvenience, she notices a sinister shadow outside, watching her intently. The following evening, Ji-woong nervously takes the same route through the alley, again singing to manage his fear. Back at her house, Sun-hai faces another power outage. Frustrated, she checks the fuse box and finds no issues. Assuming the old house is to blame, she dismisses the incident. However, as viewers, we again see the shadow lurking ominously outside her house. At the hospital, Young-ji and her team tend to patients when one suddenly begins talking to someone invisible, asking, "Who are you?" The doctors dismiss this as a hallucination caused by the patient's alcohol dependency and decide to transfer him for the safety of others. Meanwhile, another family receives the devastating news that their loved one has a slim chance of survival. This triggers anger and despair, with accusations about doctors' competence. Overcome with emotion, Young-ji steps into the restroom to collect herself. She reflects on her own traumatic experience during a severe accident that left her with a critical head injury. She recalls how her mother must have felt, clinging to hope despite the odds. While she's deep in thought, a mysterious voice interrupts her. A woman angrily questions why doctors matter if survival is entirely dependent on willpower. The sudden encounter leaves Young-ji terrified, but the tension eases when a cleaning lady enters the restroom, breaking the eerie moment. Young-ji, still shaken, composes herself and leaves, though the unsettling experience lingers in her mind. The scene shifts back to Sun-hai, fresh out of the shower and drying her hair. Just another day in her routine. But something feels off. She senses eyes on her, but shrugs it off, diving back into her tasks. Outside, Ji-woong wanders by his usual bundle of nerves. His gaze lands on Eunju, heading to the light shop after school. Their eyes meet, and Eunju, frightened, bolts away. It turns out that this ties back to an earlier episode in which Eunju thought someone was stalking her in the alley. It was just Ji-woong. Still, a shadow spooked her, making her run. Sun-hai's evening takes a weird turn when her home's power goes out, except in one forbidden room. Its lights are eerily glowing, accompanied by faint sounds. Ignoring warnings, she pushes the door open. Everything inside seems normal, just a bright bulb lighting the room. Unsettled, she shuts the door and leaves. Outside, Ji-woong strolls past, nervously belting out a song. Fed up, Sun-hai flings her window open, demanding to know why he's so loud every day. Ji-woong freezes, spots her, and flees like a terrified rabbit. Inside, Sun-hae notices the forbidden room's bulb faintly glowing, even when switched off, as if something unseen keeps it alive. Creepy, right? Meanwhile, at the high school, classes wrap up. Bobae and her gang leave, but Utama dozes off in the classroom. Nju, unable to stomach it, leaves her behind and tries to wake her. Annoyed, Nju leaves, flashlight in hand, and off to Wonyoung light shop to grab another bulb. The night takes a darker turn. Nju stumbles into Haiwon in the rain. Being polite, Nju shares her umbrella, but soon regrets it. Haiwon's nails lengthen, her height skyrockets, and her hair spirals into something monstrous. Panicked but composed, Nju remembers Wonyoung's advice. Act natural, then get out. Haiwon isn't done though. Her giant frame lumbers after Nju, who finally reaches the shop, screaming. Wonyoung, calm and collected, tells her to go home to her mom. When Haiwon approaches, he simply removes his glasses. Magically, Haiwon shrinks back to normal and slinks into the alley. Who is Wonyoung? Back at school, Utama wakes up to a mysterious girl sitting beside her, the one Bobae and her friends had whispered about. Did you see her? The girl asks, and Sun-hae. She's jolted awake by rainwater dripping from the ceiling. Young, still wandering, crosses paths with Ji-young, suitcase in hand. Together they head toward the light shop. Meanwhile, Sun-hae's shower is interrupted by hair strands falling from above. Post-shower, she finds piles of broken hair littering the floor. Sun-hae is terrified after realizing she isn't alone in the house. Suddenly, the light bulb in her home flickers out, and when she goes to check, the door slams shut on its own. At the same time, Ji-young and Young are walking past her house. Young explains that Ji-young didn't run away that day because of Sun-hae, but because he saw a dark shadow behind her. This shadow turns out to be Haiwon's. Ji-young doesn't react much but believes Sun-hae and Haiwon are connected and living together for some reason. Sun-hae often sees Haiwon inside the house, even in her sleep. She realizes that Haiwon is the reason for her frequent power outages. Sun-hae refers to Haiwon as the entity. This entity lives with her in the darkness and always terrifies her. Sun-hae tries to escape, but the door is locked. In desperation, she breaks the glass with a hammer, but still cannot leave. Young and Ji-young hear her screams for help outside. Young becomes scared, but Ji-young wants to enter the house. Ji-young warns her not to, but then he notices her nails, which terrify him because they are reversed, just like his. Ji-young cryptically says that she is like him. Ji-young's legs break when she says this, yet he tries to crawl away in panic. However, no matter how much he runs around the alley, he ends up outside Sun-hae's house. Terrified, he sits outside, crying for help. Inside, Sun-hae is also screaming for help. Meanwhile, Ji-young ignores them and walks straight to the light shop with her suitcase. Wonyoung asks why she's there, but Ji-young believes he already knows. Blood drips from her suitcase. Before they can discuss it further, a detective arrives, wanting to ask Wonyoung some important questions. The episode ends on this suspenseful note. If you enjoyed this detailed explanation, please like the video, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe.